Good evening and welcome to our social media forum, community forum here in Wilmington. I'm Sean Neville. I'm the Executive Director of Wilmington Community Television, and I'm happy to say that tonight we have a panel of some of the social media managers, the biggest social media managers in our community. If you're watching this, odds are you know some of the pages that they run or some of the feeds that they run, but you may not know who's behind those pages. And so tonight we're not only going to give you a personal look at who runs all these pages and who runs all these feeds, but we're also going to talk about why social media is important in connecting people into our community and how it plays a role in bringing us together. We'll also, I think, of course, also touch on the bad side of social media and how it can be frustrating sometimes to read some of these conversations that are happening on boards across town. First up, though, some facts about how social media is a part of our current world, and this was all taken from a Pew Research poll done a couple of months ago, and so I just want to kind of run through some numbers for the audience. 66% of Americans now use Facebook. 26% are on Instagram. 15% use Twitter. Over on Facebook, it's mostly women. 62% are women on Facebook, so just under 40% of men. The biggest age demographic on Facebook is 30 to 49. And so it's not necessarily a younger demographic. It's a lot of moms and dads that are out there. In fact, you might be surprised to know there's more people over 50 on Facebook than there are people under 30. Over on Instagram, again, gender demographics similar to Facebook, 60% women, 40% men, but it's a much younger group. More than half of people on Instagram are under the age of 30. Only 13% are over the age of 50. As for Twitter, the big difference here is that it's split, about 50-50 between men and women. The age demographics are similar to Facebook in that 30 to 49-year-old group is the biggest group, with 27% under 30, 28% over 50. So split there along those lines. And in terms of getting your news from social media, this is something that's becoming more common. 67% of people say they get at least some of their news from social media. 20% said they get their news there often. So you're thinking weekly, if not daily, that they're getting their headlines there. And when you just look at people that are under 50 years old, 78% say they get at least some of their news from social media. And news can be really anything here. It can be, a crime log or politics, but it could just be events that are happening in the community or people in the community that you want to keep up with. And so there's a broad definition of news there. And I think a lot of us are using a lot of the pages and feeds we're going to be talking about tonight to get the news in Wilmington. So that's a look kind of at the national picture and how the demographics are as a nation. With those out of the way, let's turn local. And I want to get to our first panel tonight, over on the end over here. He runs, at least numbers-wise, the biggest social media feeds in Wilmington. Officer Matthew Stavro is from the Wilmington Police Department. More than 8,000 followers on Facebook, more than 6,000 on Twitter. His Instagram page has, or I should say the department's Instagram page has more than 1,700 people following that. So impressive numbers all around, regardless of kind of where you are in a community. Matt, welcome. Tell people a little bit about the Wilmington Police social media feeds and what they're all about, which message you're trying to get out.
Thank you. The police department uses our feeds to educate the town on not only what we're doing on a daily basis, but some of the issues that we're dealing with crime-wise, crime prevention, drunk driving education, and it's also helpful for us when we need to get the word out about something. Recently there was a credit card theft. Subjects used the credit cards in Target and Wilmington. We're able to put out the video. We haven't identified them yet, but that went out not just locally, but regionally, and we had thousands and thousands of people be able to view those pictures. And we have had cases in the past where we're able to identify people through social media.
And there was someone even missing recently that you put out a word, I think, on Twitter and on Facebook to try to get that person's picture out so you could try to find them.
Yes, yeah, we had an elderly resident walk off from one of the facilities here in town, and through our posting, someone recognized her walking in Reading, and they were able to contact the Reading police, and they located her safely.
That's great. Great. We'll get back to you in a minute. I want to go over to the person sitting next to you, who is Rob Hayes with the Wilmington Apple. He kind of becomes synonymous with social media in town. A lot of people who get their news in Wilmington probably get it through a Facebook or Twitter feed that Rob is part of. The blog is about kind of anything and everything that goes on in Wilmington, and more than 5,000, nearly 5,000, I think, followers on Facebook, more than 2,000 on Twitter. He dabbles in Instagram. He's got a couple hundred on Instagram, but I think he's getting there.
Working on it.
Rob, I guess kind of talk about how important social media is for you to get your blog details out to the community.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. First of all, thank you for inviting me and hosting this. I think it's a very important and timely topic. So the Wilmington Apple is, in my opinion, the #1 news online source for Wilmington residents. We get over 200,000 hits per month. And this month, we're looking to probably break the old-time record. Sadly, when there's terrible news in the community, unfortunately, it generally means more clicks for my website. So I consider myself sort of a citizen journalist / blogger. I don't take myself too seriously. Yeah, so the website, the traffic generated from the wite primarily comes through social media. I was looking at the statistics before I got here this evening, and about 60 to 70% of the traffic that the site generates, the referrals come through Facebook, and then another 5 to 10% come through Twitter. Social media is vitally important to not just the Wilmington Apple, but really for a lot of the news websites. The Town Crier has a social media presence, and they share all their stories generally on Saturday afternoon. Jamie Pody, who's the sports editor of the Town Crier, is a must-follow on Twitter for anyone who's on Twitter and interested in high school sports. The Lowell Sun, we have Corey in the audience. She does a fantastic job live tweeting, and she publishes 3 or 4 articles a week generally related to Wilmington. So it's not just the Apple. I don't want to hog it all. Certainly the Patch obviously does a great job as well. But I got to say it's very important. I can't imagine that any of the news sites in town would be able to get their message out successfully without social media.
We'll get back to you in a minute, Rob. Thanks.
Okay.
Representing the library tonight is Brad McKenna. He's the technology librarian over at Wilmington Memorial Library. The library also runs all 3 channels, social media channels that we're focused on tonight. More than 1,500 people on Facebook, 1,200 on Twitter, more than 700 over on Instagram. Brad, I guess talk to me about how the library uses social media to get the word out about events going on, and generally what people can find on those feeds.
Sure. So we do a lot of event promotion. So before the events are happening, we'll get the word out that way to let people know what's happening. Occasionally, we'll be on the ball and do a live video during the event. And then after the event, we'll be like, here, this is what you missed, and try to entice it. It's really used to extend the reach of the library, because the library is no longer just a brick and mortar. It's more of, there's a digital presence to it. And so what we've been doing lately is looking for engagement. So like starting conversations about information in general, books, movies, stuff like that, and keeping it light. We'll use a lot of memes, stuff like that, to make it kind of funny. Questions like what's your favorite fantasy series or something like that. If you get a dinner with any fictional character, stuff like that. On a personal note, I'll use it for tech tips. For example, one of the latest iOS updates, if you had a Yahoo email address, you couldn't use the native Mail app. You had to download the Yahoo Mail app in order to do it. And I found that out through helping somebody. And so I would use social media to broadcast that to help people with technology problems.
That's great. So they don't have to come to the library and see you. They can kind of ping you on a Facebook page or a Twitter feed and get you that way.
Yeah.
Great. Sitting next to Brad is Terry Marciello. Terry runs the Buzzell Buzz on Twitter. And what I'll say is that what she lacks in followers on Twitter, she makes up for in content, because there's new pictures or videos coming out of the Senior Center every day. And Terry, I wanted to kind of talk to you just off the top here. I think a lot of people would say Twitter and the Senior Center, those are pairings that we may not necessarily think about. So how did you get involved in Twitter, and kind of how do you use that as a tool to kind of talk about what's going on at the Senior Center with the community?
Well, it's funny, yeah, when you think of the Senior Center, you certainly don't think of Twitter. So it was a couple of years ago, it was actually a young staff member, who really thought that could be a need, an unmet need that could fulfill getting us involved more in being seen in the community. I have to be honest, in the beginning, I was a bit hesitant, saying, you know, really who and what, how could we use this? Well, as time has gone on, I actually immediately, that's the first thing I do in the morning is look at Twitter. And the reason I use Twitter is I felt that it was a safe environment in the sense of response, that type of thing. But we specifically use it to really inform the community. My goal wasn't really for seniors per se, looking at it, but other pieces of the community. I have to say the Apple. I always hope that when I put something out, I always kind of count on him to put it forward. And it's helped us actually with job opportunities for the center. But again, like you were saying, we love to put out what is going on at the center, not to make people think that it's just, you know, what type of very kind of, you could say, boring activities, but there's exciting things going on, different events, and just an informative piece that people could use.
I guess, you know, if I didn't have your Twitter feed, I wouldn't know what goes, outside of a newsletter that you put out. I mean, I think the pictures really kind of show people what goes on up there on a daily basis, and hopefully people are using it, and hopefully we'll talk about that a little bit later on, okay?
Perfect.
Great. Next to Terry, we have Mike Maloney. Mike is a social studies teacher at Wilmington High School. He is also the current head of the Wilmington Teachers Association. Mike, along with a lot of his fellow teachers, is active on Twitter. I think Twitter is kind of the, at least from what I can see, you know, the social media channel of choice for a lot of teachers. And there's a lot of mixing there between personal and professional. You know, people want to post things that they're doing outside of the school, but they also want to encourage, you know, the teams or the clubs going on around the school. Mike, I know I wanted to talk to you. Are teachers encouraged to use social media, and are you finding it a good way to kind of communicate what's going on at the high school with the public?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's every individual teacher has the opportunity of whether or not they want to engage in Twitter. But for all the same reasons, Twitter's it's public, it's a public forum. I know various teachers use it in different ways, but most of the teachers who are on social media do it to show the community and the parents what different classroom activities are taking place, what kind of learning experiences students are having. I know, for example, when we've taken a lot of groups abroad over the last few years, it's been a good way to show the community, you know, what the Wilmington students are doing. We had a group of students in Normandy at Omaha Beach lay a wreath, and that was a very quick way to get that out to the public. I think, you know, you said we're lucky to have Robert and WCTV who kind of help push our student organizations. A lot of teachers, a lot of stuff I'll tweet is about student council activities or the football games, things like that. We had a Puerto Rico fundraiser for hurricane relief. You probably saw that all over social media, and that's kind of the main point of it for us.
Is there any pushback that, you know, maybe teachers shouldn't be out there doing all this, or is it generally kind of accepted that this is kind of how the world works?
Yeah, we have the district has a social media policy, which I think is very strong. And I think that, you know, using it as a way to inform the public of, you know, the great things that are happening in the classrooms here at Wilmington's definitely been promoted. You know, most of our principals, you know, our administrators, even at the Blue House, they have Twitter accounts, and, you know, it's encouraged us to show all the great things that we do here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go off Twitter for a second and go back to Facebook, and we're going to bring in Robin Domek. Robin is one of the admins for the Facebook group, the Wilmington Mass Community Page. For people who don't know what a group is on Facebook, so everybody has their accounts on Facebook, and then pages and groups can be set up. The Wilmington Community Page is a closed group, so only people who live in Wilmington are to be a part of that. And this is one of the more popular ones in town. You've got more than 4,000 people in town are part of this page, and there's a discussion there. I think every day something's going on there. It's a wide variety of things. Robin, for people that might not know the page, talk about, you know, what the purpose of it is. What do you hope people post there, and what do you hope the dialogue looks like? I said hope.
Well, the hope of me and Nancy Zimmer, who's the other administrator, we hope that people come and can share their opinions with respect for others, and these people are your neighbors, and you will be standing next to them in Market Basket someday, or see them at school, or, you know, down at Town Hall, and we want people to come and talk about things that concern them, whether it's something about the schools, or it's about soccer, or, you know, any possible issue. But the main issue is to talk with respect to each other.
And if you lose a watch or something at Gentile, you can go to your
I was
page.
gonna say, you can, anything from losing a watch, your dog, cat, kid, to finding a job, to renting a house, to, you know, pretty much where's the best place to have dinner, that it's really, you know, a good combination of all the things that are going on in Wilmington. It's kind of like the digital neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to get back to you in a little bit, because I know we've got more things to talk about at the community page. But next, we're going to go to Jen Mason. Jen is also a Facebook admin. I asked her kind of which page she's behind, and when she sent me back, I think about a dozen pages and groups that she's created. We're going to focus off the top here just about the Townie business referrals, which is one that's one of these closed groups you have to join into, but it has currently 3,000 members of the community in there. Jen, what is the Townie business referrals?
Basically, anybody can go there that lives in town and can ask for a referral, whether it be an attorney, an electrician, a plumber. We just want to get the most feedback from people who have hired those types of people. We don't let owners post their own, because that's free advertising, and that we don't know whether or not they're good or not. So we just wanted to have, a good community with good workers, and, having lots of people that are in town that have their own business would be great too. We strive on that.
How did you get involved in getting into the admin world of Facebook and kind of setting up these various pages?
I just was like, why don't we have a referral group? You think about Angie's List, and you have to pay for that, and I think it's free now, but it's a good way for our community to come together and just get, our neighbors' opinion about who they like. So I think it's been really well received.
And I guess to Robin's point, it is neighbors, and so you
Yes.
can kind of see various names on there and see
Right.
who's who, and so you can figure out who you want to trust and get referrals that
Right.
way. That's great. Matt, I want to go back to you here. Talk about you're a police officer. You're not the social media manager of Wilmington Police Department.
Correct.
You're a police officer first.
Correct.
And so I guess kind of talk about how you balance that and how your role as managing these accounts coincides with your role as just an officer of the law.
Well, I am the traffic officer for the town, so my primary job is out enforcing traffic laws, investigating crashes, that kind of stuff. I picked up social media a couple of years ago. We had a Twitter page with just a couple of followers, and that was it. And once I took that over, we kind of developed a plan to create the Facebook page and the Twitter page. So it's become my part-time, full-time position at the police department. I'm always checking, because we get so many comments, so many questions. I'm out on patrol, but I'm also responding to people. I'm sure when I'm out directing traffic at a crash, people wonder why I'm on my phone, but I'm actually trying to put out information that a road is closed while I'm directing traffic. So it is hard to split, especially because police department's a 24-hour organization, so it's not uncommon when I'm sitting on my couch at 10 o'clock at night and someone's asking me what's going on Grove Ave, and I have no idea, so.
Is it just you, or is there someone else that kind of helps you with the page?
Sergeant Brian Herman does help me somewhat. He was recently promoted, so he's kind of stepped back, but it's actually become helpful because he is one of the midnight patrol sergeants. So recently, we had those storms a couple of weeks ago that came through at night. I woke up and I had no idea the devastation that had come through, but he was able to get out a lot of good information about residents, for what roads were closed and areas to avoid.
Rob, I think when people find out about the Apple, they're surprised that it's only you. There's no staff of people writing for the Apple. And B, this is just a hobby for you. You've got a full-time job elsewhere. And so talk about, let people know, how do you get all this done? How is the Apple populating news stories every 2 hours, every day of the year? And this is just something you do on the side?
Right, so I don't want to give away too many of my secrets, Sean, but Yeah, I will say that I dedicate, let me put it this way. I try to dedicate 3 hours a night to the Apple. Some nights it's less, some nights it's more. Some nights I don't, sometimes I take a night off and then people contact me and ask me if I'm okay. So but essentially I try to do it on a daily basis. And essentially what I do is I write the posts late at night, and then I schedule them to go off on Facebook and Twitter in 2-hour increments the following day. What I also do, though, because I don't want to get beaten by another news site, is after I finish writing them, typically at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, or 3 o'clock, I will dump them into my Facebook group and into Robin's Facebook group. And then usually I wake up around 8 a.m. and I see a lot of comments in all these groups that I help generate, usually for the good, but sometimes not. So that's sort of what I do. So I should mention that I have my own group. It's nowhere near as popular as Robin's and Nancy's group, but I have a group called, you ready for this? It's an acronym, WHEN. Wilmington Happenings, Events, and News. So it's a Facebook group. I only have 3,200 group members, so they got over 1,000 on me. But so I post generally I do 12 posts a day. All my posts wind up in there. And then in addition, I'll post usually 3 or 4 of what I think might be the top stories in Robin and Nancy's group as well. That was probably way too much information. But basically, there's a little bit of a cycle to it. So I don't know if folks have picked up on it, but usually, there'll be a preview of what's happening in Wilmington. There'll be an obituary. There'll be highlights of one of the recent police logs. There'll be 10 job openings that were recently posted in town. There'll likely be a video that I share from WCTV. So there's I kind of plug some holes, but I pretty much have a general sense of what I'm covering. Real quick today, I ran a letter to the editor that Mike McCoy submitted. It actually addressed a comment on social media that was made against him and his family that he took offense to. I ran a fantastic little story on Karen Goulet. I'm probably mispronouncing that name. Okay, but she was just named the National Top Soccer Coach of the Year by U.S. Youth Soccer. I promoted fundraisers for Shawsheen Tech girls hockey team, for the Wilmington High School Cats organization. I helped promote a scholarship contest, an entry that a high school student, a video contest that he had entered. I helped raise money for a teacher who was looking for special chairs for her classroom for students with ADHD, and she was able to meet her fundraising goal today. So I do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I try to kind of split it up and cover a business story, a community story, an education story. I don't do sports very well, but I try. It's tough.
I'm not sure you've answered how you do all this, but it sounds great.
That's all you're
It's a
getting
lot
out of me.
Robin, you must tell when Rob posts something from the Apple on the community page, because
I
I think
do,
a lot
yes.
of stuff. That's
Yes.
all. It's all welcome material on the page. Yeah.
Yes, generally speaking, it is. At times, sometimes it opens a can of worms on our page and becomes a little contentious with certain people about their opinions, and they're not willing to hear other people's side of the issue, which is too bad, because that's really what this forum should be about, is to be able to talk about the issues. You don't have to agree with everyone, that person all the time. You just have to hear them and don't put them down about, and just try to understand.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree, you have to understand, at least their perspective.
Since we're here, we might as well kind of jump over to this, and we'll jump back. But as an admin, it's not your job not to be a Facebook admin. You don't collect a check from Facebook every month for regulating the
throw 'em in.
pages. So how often are you or another admin kind of just keeping tabs on the page and trying to play referee there on a daily basis?
Well, there were originally 3 of us when I started almost 2 years ago. But one stepped out because she had a lot of commitments going. And it's now Nancy Zimmer and myself. We take a kind of a laid-back approach pretty much to what is initially put on the page, because we are actually big First Amendment believers. That, you know, you have the right to put your opinion out there if, you know, if you so choose. But we have the hardest time keeping people in line in at times when it's about serious subjects like the detox center, or the first serious thing I had to look at was the 4th of July problem a couple of years ago. That, you know, you would have thought that we were talking about the major, you know, problem, when it was just about, you know, carnival in
Yeah,
town, which was important.
I think-
It's an important thing,
I
but.
think when you get to community topics, you know, people are passionate about things, and I think as
Right.
much, I mean, to offer my 2 cents, I think that for all the headlines that are generated on the national scene, it's really a lot of these community issues and the things that happen on a street-by-street basis that really kind of hit, you know, literally hit home for people, because they can envision how that's going to impact their community. So I think people, as strongly as they want to feel about national politics, feel just as strongly about what's going on.
And even
Yeah.
stronger, I think,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it is their backyard.
Yeah.
Literally, many times,
Yeah.
literally.
Jenny, what are we in here at all about kind of regulating community pages and commenters, and have you run into the similar issues? Obviously, referrals are probably a little bit of a safer space than an
Yeah.
open page like the community page.
I used to be an admin on the community page when it first began, but I was a lot more strict with how it was run than how it's run today. I just don't have the time to put into it how it's run today. The referral page, some people want to put negative feedback on when someone posts about a business, and I just don't agree with that, because it could cause a lot of problems for the business owner, and not everybody has the same experience. Not everybody agrees with me, but I just don't have the time to be, you know, monitoring the page, you know, regularly. I do have a full-time job, so.
Right.
And that's actually one of the things about Nancy and me that we're pretty liberalish about what goes on the page, because we don't have time to sit and watch the page and every post and every word from so-and-so about such and such, to keep a close tab on it. You know, I look at it a couple of times a day, unless I get someone who's reported a post. But otherwise, you know, the people on the page are basically, most of them are adults, and we expect them to
Yeah.
behave as such, so.
We like to think so. Mike, I want to bring you in on this conversation, as you smile there, because, you know, I think a lot of things are maybe said on social media that you would hope aren't said in person, but maybe sometimes they are. Especially, I know we've had some issues that have been brought up at school committee meetings over the past year with things being said about teachers online. And I guess, you know, how much is that being noticed in town, that it's a problem, and kind of what needs to happen?
Well, with our social media policy, we don't, as teachers, engage with anything on social media. But we do hear about it. And I know that, you know, the school committee has brought up a couple times and made the point that, like you said, you know, what we're saying on social media really should be what we'd be willing to say in front of people as well. And I don't know if that all happens all the time. You know, in some sense, you know, teachers are, you know, public figures, and people are going to disagree with, you know, some of the things, whether you give too much homework or that or this. But, you know, I think it's good that the school committee notices it. I just think that in general, one of the problems with social media, I think, you know, Robert and some of the journalists could speak to this a little better, is that in our current state with Twitter and even Facebook to an extent, it's so important to always kind of be first, that sometimes being right, and I said, we have a great group around here who's right vast majority of the time. But when that happens, sometimes the conversations that start are about information that is either inaccurate or incomplete. And so sometimes that creates a conversation that probably never needed to take place in the first place. All of us teachers here, all the members of the association have emails. We have back-to-school nights. We have parent-teacher conferences. There are a number of ways in which parents can engage us. And, we hope that, they're willing to do that and come in and discuss with us. That's, what our stance on that would be. And I say we do appreciate the school committee, looking into how teachers are being discussed on social media.
Terry, talk about the people who you serve at the senior center. Because I know Twitter is not necessarily an older demographic, do people at the senior center, are they aware of, the fact that you're tweeting daily? Are they aware that they're out there kind of all the time on Twitter, or is it that they just know that you do something on the computer or the phone so occasionally?
No, they are aware of Twitter. And the reason, it's very different than some people here at the table in the sense of, first of all, I don't have a certain hour or anything like that. But it's more or less for fun. It's more or less for people to be aware that, say, different programs that are happening, that they know when I'm in there running into say, a Zumba class or a yoga class, or a speaker, or for home-delivered meals, that when they see me, they go, oh, is this Twitter? Yeah, it is, everyone, So, or else I just try to pop in and take a shot. But again, it's more or less for fun and for people to see what's going on, so everyone gets a kick out of it. Everyone likes it. It was interesting, when we first started, we were actually one of the first 10 in Massachusetts for Twitter for Senior Center, and it got to be very competitive, saying, well, how did you do this, and why did you do this, and aren't you crazy, and no one's gonna, and why are you wasting your time? And then interesting, once the other communities started doing it, Council on Agings, which they're called in other towns, started getting more popular. Their people started paying more attention. So I think it's really interesting that people are starting to be more receptive to it. People are telling, we have a knitting group that knitted something, it's called the Linus group, and also for the local heroes. And one of the seniors, granddaughters noticed her on Twitter. Before you know it, went on Facebook, and she came in, she was so excited, I understand Twitter now, So it's more or less a fun thing for us.
Yeah. Brad, I imagine it's similar at the library. It's a fun thing.
Yeah.
Do library patrons, and especially maybe some crowd that's been there for years and years, do they recognize what you're putting out there, and do they respond to it?
Yeah, we struggle with engagement. We don't have a lot of the problems with trying to mediate conversations. We want to get the conversation going, because when it first started, the accounts were set up before I started there. It was more of just hours and events, so basically just bulletin board kind of thing. So things have changed over time as to how we're using it. So a lot of the times people will comment on events. If we post something like we had a concert last weekend, we'll post a video of the concert, and people are I was there, it was great. We get a lot of traction with kids events. Kids love seeing themselves on Facebook and Twitter and all that kind of stuff, and so the parents are always following. We found our biggest demographic on Facebook is really just moms. It's great. So we get a lot of conversation going through that. But we actually, I get a lot of people from the senior center who they come, they sign up for Tech Help, and they're what's this Facebook I hear about, And I'll have to explain it to them. So they're definitely interested, but I think a lot of people are intimidated by it because they're not sure what is on there, and it's unmediated really when you're talking about us. When you're talking about your groups there, where you had a closed group. That must do so much to get rid of a lot of the bots, the fake accounts, because you have to approve something. And so you're not going to have a lot of the vitriol of people just trolling.
Yes.
So that's a really good way to do it.
And we also have the ability to remove people from the group
Yeah.
as well, if necessary. We try to avoid doing that,
Yeah.
but once in a while, it happens.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, most of these accounts here, they're public. Even if you don't have Facebook, you know, you can go to any Facebook page. I mean, everyone up here and us included is something that you can just go and you can browse. And I know Twitter is the same. Twitter is open for everybody. I mean, you can just kind of go and look around at stuff, with a few exceptions. Can anybody kind of jump in here? Do you think there's something in the community where people are being left behind? So if people don't join Facebook, they don't join Twitter, that they're being left out with kind of this new approach to engaging with the community, and how do we bring those people in, or do those people just have to keep up in traditional sense?
I know we try to get stuff to the newspapers, but it doesn't always happen. We recently did a Citizens Police Academy, and we were advertising it on Facebook and Twitter. And I'd sent something to the town crier, and I don't think I got it in on time. So after the fact, once we started posting pictures every week of what we were doing, then people started saying, "Oh, what was the Citizens Academy? I'd be really interested in that." So there, it is hard for us to remember sometimes that not everybody in Wilmington is on this page. I would love it if everyone followed us. It would make communication a lot easier. But sometimes you do need to remember to go to the local newspapers as well to get that information out.
Anybody else want to kind of jump in there about communicating with people who, we're all kind of moving forward and say, oh, I tweeted this and I put a picture on Facebook of this, but there are still people out there that, believe it or not, are not on Facebook all the time and just want to communicate the old-fashioned way, I guess, with either through the newspaper, or through email, or just a phone call.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the town crier's biggest fan, so I know that some people look at me as competition to the crier. I'm not on their level as far as I'm concerned. But I do think that there is drawbacks to a traditional weekly newspaper. So the town crier goes to print, I believe, on Wednesday morning. So anything that happened, so as an example, I served on the school committee for 3 years, and we would meet on Wednesday nights. So we would have these meetings on Wednesday night, and they wouldn't be covered in the town crier until a following full 7 days. So that's just an example. Things that happen in the community on Tuesday or Wednesday may not make it, or even Monday sometimes, don't necessarily make it in that week's town crier. And so you're having to wait an entire week to get that information. So I would say that social media supplements traditional media, and I would encourage people to support local media and subscribe to the town crier if they don't, or visit the library and read the library subscription. But there's so much on social media that doesn't make it into the town crier. There are things that I cover that don't make it into the town crier. So I would encourage folks to look at both. Look at the online news sources like the Patch and the Apple, and also look at the traditional sources like the Crier and the Sun.
Yeah. Terry, are people intimidated by hearing so much about going on Facebook?
I have to say, there's always going to be an unmet need. Like, there's always going to be the people out there that don't understand social media. But I really think it's still, we thought learning curve was a couple of years ago. I think it's still happening. I think people are feeling more comfortable with it because of these types of discussions. Elders are, they're more savvy than you think. When I say elders these days, it could be 55, 60 and older, but they're more savvy than you think. Facebook tends to be the one that they tend to be more comfortable with, but it's always interesting the more people that go into it. And I think a lot of it too is intergenerational. I think they see whether older people see their grandkids and the way to communicate, seeing families. And then once they start doing that, it leads into something else. So I think there's still people on the learning curve, but in some ways, I think more people use it than we realize.
Mike, can you talk at all about Snapchat and how we're all trying to figure out what's going on in these channels, and then it seems like there's something new coming up all the time, and I know Snapchat is a very young audience, and so I'm sure a lot of the kids at the high school use it, and if anybody here could be an expert on that, please speak up, because I can't, and I'm not sure any of us can, but just trying to figure out what's next and figure out what the kids are up to on the internet these days.
Well, I call it snap face because even though I'm not quite that old yet, but it's still foreign to me. I don't use it. I know the kids are really into it. I would say one of the challenges with, I guess, social media now with the high school students I teach, I'm sure it's the same for some of the younger kids now kids get these devices younger is that they really are attached to their phone. We have a policy here at the high school where, unless you're using it for some sort of, academic purpose, which we do use. We do use the phones for academic purposes, but we collect them. Just to kind of break that tie that they, they have to these devices. And I think that's the one that's the most popular. Now, I'm not an expert on it, can't really, I know that, I think something like one of my buddies has one that, him and his wife snap pictures of their kids to each other, or whatever, when one of them has them. But yeah, seems to be one that's the most popular.
I think.
There's a privacy factor with that. I don't use it either, but
Yeah.
I know that when it originally started, everything's deleted. So like you tweet something, you put something in your Facebook, it's there forever, copies upon copies. But with Snapchat, everything's deleted after a certain period of time. So I think a lot of kids were like, privacy, right? That's
Yeah.
the stuff. So, and their moms are already on Facebook,
Yeah.
right? So,
Nana's on
Yeah,
Facebook,
exactly.
everyone's on, yeah.
I think it's important for parents to keep up with these things. That's why I got into Facebook initially, was my kids were starting to grow up, and I said, what's this Facebook thing? And Twitter took me a little while, I don't get it, took me a little while. And then, like that other person, now I understand it. And then a couple of years ago, I opened up a Snapchat account, and I had to call my son Jack and say, how do you use this? I don't get it. I understand it now, and it's, I understand, there's no application really for the police department. There's one police department in England, I believe, that uses Snapchat, that we really don't have any reason for using it, but it does have its purpose, and it does have its issues as well.
I have a younger cousin who tried to explain it to me a few years ago. He's in his mid-20s. And I guess like different cities around the world will have like a Snapchat story that they'll show during the course of the day. So you can go to, he studied in Buenos Aires, so he went on there and showed all the different, filtered stories of people in the day of a life. So I guess that could be pretty neat. I teach social studies, something like that could be, but I can't, going past the privacy issues, I wouldn't try to use that in class or anything. Whereas something like Twitter, you can, certainly.
I just thought that Snapchat, to me, I've used it recently, and it seems almost a combination of Twitter and Facebook in some ways. It's mostly picture-driven, a little bit of, text chatter, and liking, a loving, I should say, the heart on, and that's, it's basically a photo book of your friends and your relatives and.
She's not on the panel tonight, but I do notice that she's in the audience, and so I'm going to ask Jackie to see if I can bother her for 1 second at the microphone up here for a second, because Jackie runs the Town of Wilmington Twitter feed, or she's at least, the admin on that. And Jackie, can you just talk for everybody with what the town does on Twitter and what that feed's all about?
Sure. Was actually created prior to my starting, but when I accepted the position, Kendra Amaral, the former assistant town manager, handed the task over to me. What I largely do on it is post information about events, dates, times, important things like that. Pertinent things. I try to keep it pertinent, timely information.
Yeah. And you found it successful. I mean, did people in the community talk to you about what they find on there and?
Not really.
No,
No, we
real
don't get a lot
response?
of feedback on it. We do have it posted right on our homepage too, so the information is readily accessible.
All right. Well, thanks for coming to the microphone, okay? I saw you over there, wanted to bring you in on this, so
Thank you.
Going back to the panel here, and if anybody else wants to talk from the audience, certainly go up to the microphone. We'll take a question or two. If you could change one thing about social media, and someone brave can go first, and the rest of you can think this over. What would that one thing be? What would you change to make things better?
I would get rid of the anonymity, because it makes it so easy to be a troll, for lack of a better word, because you have no repercussions. I mean, even, I guess to some degree, even if people are well-known, there's no repercussions with what you say online. And I'm not talking about like punishment, just like personal responsibility for what you say. There's none of that, and it's hard. And I know a lot of it is to do with it's just there's not people behind these accounts. They're just bots. I was listening to a podcast a couple of weeks ago saying there are 200 million fake Facebook accounts. 200 million. It's just amazing. It's a small country. So like, some way to get rid of that. I know that Twitter gets pushback with the verification process they have, so you have to prove you are who you say you are, and they only verify, celebrities and stuff like that, probably lawsuit oriented, but like, I think that's a good idea to tie it to somebody, because you can say whoever you are. So I think there's a safety to be a troll online because you're distanced from it. So I would definitely like to see steps made in that direction.
Well, I think of the community board, even if you don't have your real name listed as your profile name, a lot of people know who you are because you have friends in the community. You have your friends in Facebook are going to be your friends in the community most of the time. And I think they don't realize that, I've just lost my train of thought, sorry.
Don't realize maybe that what they're posting is seen by everybody else in that
Yes.
page?
Yes,
and
yes.
Because they're home alone doesn't mean that it's only they can see something.
Right, and
You see that a lot of people losing their jobs.
I was just gonna say, losing their jobs, or just the fact that, as Rob had said, Mr. McCoy had posted, he had put out a letter about a post or a comment that someone had made on Facebook on the community group. And you had said that you didn't think that there's repercussions, but in a way, that letter was a repercussion for the man who made the comment that Mr. McCoy didn't like. And also, there's also someone else just this week who, he's involved in town things, and, he's gotten a lot of grief about certain things that he's said, not on Facebook so much, but at town meetings, that people have come back at him, called him names, and his family, and, things like that, that he's gotten repercussions from what he says in a public forum, like in person. People take it and bringing it to Facebook land and take it and run with it. And some of it's true, I'm sure, whatever, but no one has to prove anything of what they say.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with that, the anonymity aspect, but I also kind of say that there is a lack of personalization. It's one of my biggest kind of concerns about it. I teach a government course here, and I have my students write about American political culture and the idea of bridging capital. And I do think that some of these social media networks, they actually kind of funnel you right through their advertising process and through what pops up on your feed to one side of every issue. So even though you in theory have access to political commentary from every area of the political sphere, really is you're only reading the stuff that you already tend to agree with. And I think that the lack of personal contact, we don't have bowling leagues like we used to. We don't have like some of these, and I think some of our community, Wilmington, I think does a pretty good job of having places where people come together, but it isn't everywhere. So some of that, that bridging political capital that we've had for a long time has kind of gone away.
Go ahead, Sarah.
It's funny that you should say this, because why I started with Twitter is because I felt in reviewing everything, my kids would probably laugh listening to this, but is that you had more control as to responses and that type of thing. And I have been getting a push to go onto Facebook, and I have to tell you, some of the things that are coming up here in discussion is the piece that has held me back as to, something saying like and dislike, and I really try to keep everything in a very positive manner, and it does make me a little bit apprehensive with the Facebook. But truly, I probably should, and you'll probably see in the next few months that we have been working on doing Facebook or having a Facebook page. But there is that apprehension. There really is that apprehension.
Yeah. Rob, do you see that from the Apple's perspective, kind of a difference in commentary between what you post on Facebook and what you post on Twitter?
Yes, I would agree to that. Definitely a lot more engagement on Facebook than on Twitter. On Twitter, I'll get a lot of favorites and likes, but on Facebook, you actually get a lot of comments, where you don't really get that in the 140 or 280 character limit on Twitter. Just to answer your original question, though, about things I'd like to see different, or if I could change one thing, just to tie into some of the previous discussions, regarding something Mr. Mahoney mentioned previously, I would like to see parents follow the district's chain of command. So I know this is something that has been brought up multiple times in multiple school committee meetings. And I think if a parent is going to say something potentially negative about a particular teacher or the school department in general or whatnot, it really has to be the last resort, not the first instinct. I think you really have to go to that teacher, go to the principal, go to the administrator. Just follow the proper chain of command that's outlined in all the parent and student handbooks. And then regarding something Robin mentioned, I see it less so in my group because I don't get the number of interactions that Robin's group does. But I know that like Robin's #1 golden rule is like be kind to others, essentially. I don't know if I'm misquoting that, but be respectful and be kind, right?
Yes.
And I just wish that everyone had the same definition of what is respectful and what is kind, because I think that's where we fall down. And then we, as moderators, have to make a judgment call. So you're all about respectfulness and kindness, and on my page, I talk about not being too negative or harsh. So like, where are the lines? Harsh, negative, positive, respectful. So it's tricky. It's tricky.
Well, I think calling people names is not being kind and respectful. If, whether
That's
it's,
an easy one, Rob.
whether, no, you would
Yeah.
believe that to be so. But, whether even if you're saying you're a jerk, or people go much, much farther with, brutal language, that's not kind. Either saying you're a jerk or or whatever else, you can't, they're both not on the kind spectrum.
Robin, without naming names here or
Oh, I
kind of
got
getting into a specific issue, I'm curious, I know the page shut down, I think on Labor Day weekend, the
Yes,
page
it
was,
did.
it was closed, and
Yes.
it was the talk of the town, that we can't post on the community
Awesome.
page.
They missed us.
Can you talk a little bit about what leads to those sorts of decisions, or leads to deleting comments or turning off comments, and when you finally say, we've had enough?
Well, that was one of the, that was definitely a day that we had enough, and it wasn't planned, we shut it off, and I thought it was just gonna be a couple hours. But then it turned into a few days, because we knew that if we started it up again, people would come back and just continue. It's almost like you had to break the cycle of the vicious stuff in order to keep then you can go back to more normal behaviors and chat.
Yeah.
So, and honestly, it was only supposed to be a very short time, but
You gave yourselves a weekend.
we needed that. This, we spend a lot of time on it, and we do try to mediate between some certain people at times. We tell them, stop, enough. Well, of course, we shut off comments many times because something's getting too heated, or it gets to be repetitive, which, as many will see, my favorite meme of all is the beating a dead horse meme. That it's a picture of an old-fashioned picture with a guy beating a dead horse, because it's almost like that they don't understand enough or stop or,
Jen, because you've been doing it a while on Facebook and doing admin on Facebook, have you noticed any tone changes over the years? Is it worse than it used to be, do you feel like?
It depends on who's the admin of the page. I mean, I set my rules right out straight, saying no negative, all positive. Talk about some of the negative that we had in one of the groups I had, the middle school page I do for the 6th grade. The summer came and everybody was anxious about homework and, you know, all the different types of books the kids were gonna need and supplies, and people were really getting stressed out, and some people left the group before school even started. So I have to monitor those comments because the group is just mostly for information, and that's what most of my groups are. It's mostly for information, be positive, you know, it's to be informed. So with the community page, I tend to not read as much anymore over there because I don't have the time, and it just drives me crazy. I don't know how Robin and
Drives us
Nancy
all
do it.
crazy.
I'd
As
be
I
deleting
said,
everything.
The first, right, she's like, you should be deleting more people. You should really, delete this comment, this, but there's one example of something that was posted just this past year that I didn't think should have stayed up there, and the other 2 moderators, because we had 3 at the time, said, no, keep it. And it was the one about flyers that were posted on Cunningham Street in that area from like a Nazi group, a neo-Nazi group. And I thought, no, we're not gonna leave that up there, that's advertising for them. And then, but I said, okay, majority rules, so we kept it. And what ended up happening is a group of people came together and started a new group called Wilmington Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And we meet every month, and it's actually been good. We're trying to, have people, come in and
Yeah.
do other
So
events.
So certainly a success story that came out of that conversation.
Yes,
And,
yeah.
and I'll kind of look at the panel now and just say, any other success stories that you can kind of take away from what you've done on social? I know we were just talking before we started, Matt, about the 9 p.m. lock the door routine, which I'm botching. You had a nice catchphrase on that, but that was a recent campaign that you were running that went on for, I think, weeks, that you just blasted out there to get the word out.
Yeah, I found on Twitter, Pasco County Sheriff's Department down in Florida had started this hashtag 9 p.m. routine. And they were doing it to get residents at 9 o'clock as a reminder, are your doors locked? Is your house locked up, or is your car locked up? Because they saw they had a lot of car breaks. And so we started getting some car breaks again. So I said, all right, I'm gonna try this out, because it could spread throughout the whole country. And so we started doing it, and there was not a lot going on in Massachusetts, but Blackstone, Massachusetts was doing it. Seekonk started doing it. I believe Brookline had jumped in there. So we did it for about 3 weeks. And the idea is, use a little humor, which oddly, some people got a little upset that the police department would use humor on something like this. But to use a little humor to make people think, oh yeah, is my car door locked? Because as we see, 99% of the car breaks that we come across, it's because the car was unlocked.
Yeah, it was a simple message, and it's certainly one that caught a lot of people's attention. Rob, I can see you want to jump in.
Just wanted to make a joke. Matt was retweeted by the official Backstreet Boys Twitter account. Did
Yeah,
that make your career, Matt?
That was one of the highlights of my career. I was strutting around the police department saying, hey, the Backstreet Boys retweeted us last night.
How many of the
So,
high school kids knew the Backstreet Boys, but people my age.
yeah.
Any other kind of success stories people can point to with something that you've, we'll go right back to you, Robin, in a second. Let me go to Terry first.
I have to say, thank you once again, Rob. And actually and also a couple of the teachers too, retweet us. And in the process, we were actually looking for home-delivered meal drivers. And because of Twitter, I got 2 fantastic new drivers. And again, it wouldn't have happened as quickly, the information wouldn't have gotten out, and it wouldn't have filled that vacancy that we had. And it was just so wonderful when they get, Of course, when someone comes in for a job, you're like, "Hun, how did you find this out? Twitter." Really? Twitter? And what day did you find? So I think it most definitely, that's just one example, but it truly had a big impact on the center.
Rob?
Well, my neighbor Paula Stalker, she has been donating her time to a church group in Everett that supports economically impoverished people and homeless people and things like that. And she one day had gone to see their storage for babies and children, and she saw that there were like just a few diapers left to give out, and so she decided to start asking people on Facebook, anybody, would you like to contribute to, for diapers? And people literally send boxes upon boxes upon boxes of diapers to her house on a regular basis. The FedEx and UPS men are there every day. And then it also went to, she started collecting clothing and for children and men and women of all sorts. She's gone through the summer, now we're going to the winter. She's been incredible, all the amount of things. And the people of this town have been extremely, extremely generous to people they don't know.
Yeah, I think probably everyone on the panel can kind of attest to that. That every time there seems to be a call for donations or some help, or there's always seems to be plenty of people looking to step up and help that sort of thing. So, Rob, yeah.
A couple of quick success stories. Some of the groups that aren't here being represented on this panel, but I think really do just fantastic work, and I think show some of the value and that social media brings is the yard sale group run by Brandy King. I know that's a very popular site for folks to sell things at a bargain and buy things at a bargain. You mentioned Paula, who I didn't realize is your neighbor, so I learned something new tonight. Paula is very active on the Wilmington Donates page. So there's a specific face group just for folks who are looking to either donate items or raise funds for volunteer opportunities.
Right.
So there's a Facebook group specific to that. There's also the Everything for Free Facebook group. I'm probably messing that name up as well, where folks can just exchange things for free. And then one of the more popular groups in town is the I'm Lucky I Grew Up in Wilmington Facebook group, which are people who grew up in Wilmington, kind of self-explanatory. Maybe they graduated from Wilmington High or Wilmington Public Schools, and they reminisce about the old days and how Wilmington used to be a lot of, for better or worse, it was a much different town. And then I also think Wilmington Community Television does a fantastic job on social media. I watch pretty much all my WCTV either via social media or through Castus. So kudos to WCTV. And then I know a lot of the nonprofit organizations, the youth sports organizations, they either have Facebook pages or Facebook groups. So it allows members in the greater community the ability to keep tabs on maybe some of their favorite local nonprofit organizations. And last but not least, Jen Mason has created, I don't even know how many Facebook groups, and many of those are examples of fantastic things that are happening on Facebook.
Yeah.
Great. So I think we're going to wrap up here, but I just kind of closing thoughts. I want anybody can jump in here as to whether you feel like overall social media is a good thing for our community, is connecting people throughout the town, or is it outweighed by some of the bad stuff that happens in town and some of the negative stuff? Or put it another way, would we be better off if social media were to just go away, people would just get off of it, or are we better off kind of building on what we currently have in the community right now? Anybody can jump in. Robin, you can jump in first.
I was going to say, I think it's for the better of the community. A few bad apples shouldn't spoil the whole bunch, because a lot of people depend on getting information about school or events and sign up for soccer and I need places, I'd like to donate, or where can my child volunteer, or where could so-and-so find a job? And people are really willing to reach out and help most of the time. So I think the 5% of negativity, you have to just take that with a grain of salt, and you have to look at the 95%. I think that it does a lot of good.
Who else?
I just have to say, I have a lot more friends than I've ever had before, and it's great. And it really is. And I just love knowing all the parents that my kids go to school with. So I think it helps me on that token. It does help with events too. If there's an event out there, people can RSVP.
Yep.
So, and then you know how many people are gonna be going, and then you wanna go, and that person wants to go, so. But I think it's great.
I personally think it's also wonderful. It's not only opened us more up into the Wilmington community, but also, like I was saying, with other senior centers, and in turn, sharing information that way. So I really see it as a positive. Hopefully, you know, obviously, compared to everyone else, we're smaller, but we're hopefully growing.
I'd say there are certain times when, you know, it gets a little frustrating. Not so much what's happening here, but, you know, just, you know, seeing certain tweets and things like that where, you know, it can get a little bit difficult. But, you know, you hear stories about Mrs. Stalker and how fast she's able to get those necessary things. That's really the essence of how good it can be, especially in a town like ours. I would say, though, all of us grew up in a world without it. So we kind of knew how to navigate having conversations with people. And I think that's one thing that you know, it's on me, it's on my colleagues, and on parents, that the young people have to navigate both from the beginning. And that's a challenge going forward, to make sure we don't lose those interpersonal connections and that ability. And I think we do that here with the Wilmington Public Schools, and it's something that we got to continue to work on.
Say it's definitely been a positive for the police department. We've basically opened up the police department to the community. Yes, the police department's always been there, but to some people, it's an intimidating building. They're afraid to call us. They don't, you know, to report something. And this gives people the opportunity in a medium that they're comfortable with to send us a message. We've gotten crime information, information that may not be criminal of nature, but some suspicious activity. Sometimes it's a little frustrating because people are using it to notify us of things that are going on now and need an immediate response, and I may not see it for 12 hours. So that can be a problem sometimes, but for the most part, it's been very positive for the police department. It's very rare that we've had to remove comments. We do have terms of service on our Facebook page, but because we're a government agency, we are limited on what we can remove from the page because it is a free speech issue. So we tend to leave, if someone's not happy about something, we tend to leave it up there. When someone makes a negative comment, usually, you know, the people of Wilmington will usually jump right out and jump on top of them. So we don't even usually respond because if you don't like us, then that's okay. You're allowed to say that. It's free. It's a free country.
Rob, Brad, want to weigh in?
Well, Sean, I posted this question on one of the groups that I belong to, and I'll just read some of the responses. Real brief. I feel like it has made me more informed about what's going on in town. So this is social media bringing us together or dividing us. Is it good or bad? It helps keep us informed of town issues. I feel more connected and informed. People will have their opinions no matter what. I like to believe the good outweighs the bad. Let's see. And then this was a kind of a deep one here. I've found many examples of both. When people put their opinions out in front of a broad audience, it makes it harder for them to backtrack, which I think is part of the awful political climate as we keep people keep digging in their heels on many issues. But it also allows for not always informed complaint sessions. But at the same time, look at all the ways we socially communicate to do good. Donations, causes, sharing news about our kids, and quick answers to questions and access to recommendations and information. Every new technology and trend will have pluses and minuses. It just depends on how each person uses them. So I thought that really hit the nail on the head, and I think there's an acknowledgement that there's good and bad, but to quote one of the other, I think the good, vastly outweighs the bad. And I'd put it around 5% as well.
I just want to jump on that, not always informed. We do get, if there's ever a major incident in Wilmington, Delaware, or Wilmington, North Carolina, people jump all over us. And I used to ignore it, and after going to a law enforcement social media class, they said, address the, if someone has a complaint, someone's complained, tell them. So I basically have a canned response now about, you've got the wrong police department, but people they tend to sometimes just jump out and say something without really looking at who they're posting to, even though we have Wilmington MA in our name.
There is a WCTV in Tallahassee, Florida. I'm always flattered when somebody sends a message our way to complain about coverage, and I have to send it right back to them, so. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for all the panelists for coming on tonight and really having this conversation. I hope it was helpful for the community. I know we don't have a lot of full seats here, but I know we have a lot of people watching at home and a lot of people watching it in the weeks to come. So I do appreciate all your time. So thank you for watching at home, whether it's live tonight or in the future. And hopefully we'll be doing more of these types of community forums in the future. So look for something on WCTV. As Rob was gracious enough to note, WCTV, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So certainly check us out to see all the events and the people that we're covering around the community. Thanks so much. Have a great night.